Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP Sports Talk on this Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, Season 4, Episode 49 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Gulf Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for their newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210 and tell them CDP Chris Palme sent you there as well. And also, guys, you can also pre-order the all-electric Silverado pickup truck or the all-electric Cadillac Lyric now, all pre-ordered, available through barrycullen.com, or give them a call at 519-824-0210. Anyways, guys, I'm looking forward to my guest today. This is her third appearance on Live with CDP podcast. Her name is Amy Lawrence. She's the longtime host of After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Radio, and she's on during the week, Monday to Friday, between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just bear with me, guys, and I will bring on the host of After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Radio and just talk a little bit of World Series and maybe a little bit NFL with Amy. 1 second. Good afternoon, Amy. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you again so much for coming on my third time.
You're welcome. I appreciate you having me.
That's good. No problem. How was your sleep today? Because I know how hard it is working the overnight shift.
I actually was off last night, so I didn't have to worry about sleeping during the daytime today. Though when I try to flip my schedule during the middle of the week, it doesn't generally go well. But yeah, I took a personal day, so I didn't host the show last night. So I was awake with the pets around 6:45 this morning.
How are the pets doing, and how's Benny doing?
She's doing well. She's taking a snooze right nearby here while I'm sitting in the kitchen. And as soon as we're done, we'll have to go for her walk.
How's the weather your way right now? Here it's about 16 Celsius, which is about I think about 62 degrees here right now.
Oh, it's not that warm here. It is bright and sunny, but the temps are in the 50s. It actually got down below freezing here last night. So really pretty moon though, full moon, absolutely gorgeous sky full of stars. I love the weather in the fall and in the winter. So the colder, the better. Penny and I love the cold.
Yes, and I'm taking my nephew to his first Canadian Football League playoff game this Sunday in Toronto, and it's going to be a balmy 2 Celsius, which is about, 34, 35 degrees, and some snow flurries. So I'm looking forward to that.
Perfect.
Yes, perfect football weather. And right now, Amy, this is the best time of the year for me for sports, with the NFL, the CFL, and all the sports going on right now.
Good. I'm glad you're happy. Always good to have something to look forward to.
And I'm also feeling better. I ended up picking up COVID and had it for 2 weeks. So I'm just glad to be back about 95% now.
2 weeks, huh? Man, I'm sorry, but I'm glad you're doing well.
Yes, for some reason it just it got me strong, and but it's so much nicer to be feeling much better and stuff like that. But anyways, I'll get on to some questions, Amy. First one I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on the 2022 Major League Baseball season?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that the lockout is a distant memory. It's almost like it never happened. The fact that we were for weeks wondering whether or not the season would even be a reality. And then we knew it wouldn't start on time, only to have this quick about face by baseball and the Players Association, so that we ended up starting just a week late. And the number of people who told me they were done with baseball because of this lockout and the work stoppage, and that was it. It was the last straw. I mean, I got bombarded by those tweets and those calls on the show. But as it turns out, as soon as baseball returned, people were willing to forgive and forget. And speaking of forget, I don't know that anybody talks about the lockout anymore or has really, going back to say probably the middle of the season. It obviously delayed some of the business of football, and it delayed the start of the season, and it pushed back the beginning of the postseason. And that meant the World Series played out into November. But it really is a distant memory, as though the lockout never happened. So that's one thing. I feel like baseball had a really good season, though I would say that the postseason continued to break in unfortunate ways for Rob Manfred. The fact that they had nearly 7 days off in between the end of the league championship series and the start of the World Series. There was a lot of lost momentum there. Also, the rain delay that pushed them back and caused Game 5 to go up against the NFL. So there were a couple of circumstances that the commissioner and his office would have changed. But overall, I think with the Aaron Judge home run chase for most in a single season in the American League, as well as my favorite, Albert Pujols, the fact that he gets to 700, what an awesome second half he had. There's so much young talent, and ultimately, sports are always served best when there's a villain, and that remains the Houston Astros. They're still a villain. The upstart Phillies, the last team to get into the playoffs, the fact that it was the Phillies and the Padres in the NLCS, and then the Astros winning the title. Lots of great storylines, and certainly a very compelling offseason ahead of us.
Before I get into my next question, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Major League Baseball draft lottery. I know the NHL and the other leagues have it, but I just wanted to get your 2 cents on this new system for Major League Baseball.
I understand the purpose for it. I get that you don't want teams to attempt to put themselves in a better position for that overall number one pick. But I honestly don't believe that tanking is a legit problem in many sports. I don't know. I guess I start with the NFL model. The NFL is the league that every other league wants to be when it grows up, and they don't have an issue with tanking. I think the far greater issue in Major League Baseball is not the draft lottery or tinkering with that, but the idea that there are no hard salary caps and that the money that athletes sign up for is fully guaranteed. So that, I think, it creates a situation where for the big name free agents, you only have so many teams that can legitimately take a shot. Would Aaron Judge be attractive to pretty much any team out there? Absolutely. How many teams can actually afford or would choose to pay his price tag? That market is relatively limited. Recently had a conversation with Jim Bowden for my show After Hours with Amy Lawrence, and he reminded me that the Cleveland Guardians had more than 12 rookies this year, more than a half dozen rookies, and that they built through the draft, and that the Houston Astros also built through the draft. So if you have great scouts, a good scouting department, and a good general manager's office, you definitely can build through the draft. But more often than not, what we see is teams spending a lot of money on free agents. And I do believe that the system stacks up so that only a few teams can go after the best of the best.
Being a Tigers fan, I'm really hoping the hiring of Scott Harris from the Giants will get the Tigers back into a playoff contention in the next 2 to 3 years. I'm hoping. They do have some nice young pieces there, but I'm just hoping Scott Harris is the guy to turn around the Tigers franchise.
Well, I hope so too. They've made a few moves lately and they haven't panned out. They obviously could use an infusion of some star power, but there's another situation where the draft could be really beneficial to a team that for the last few years has been toward the bottom of its division, has scuffled to make any headway in a rebuilding project. So I hope so too, for your sake, Chris.
And one thing about sports, I've learned this from doing the podcasting too, is how important scouting is. You can have the number one pick, you can have this and that, but you also have to have really good scouts and a little bit of luck too, because it's still a crapshoot with the draft. You just never know if these guys are going to make it or not.
Well, of course. I mean, we're human beings, even if we are very high profile athletes. And so there's no such thing as a sure thing. I don't care who it is. You look at the number of top picks that don't pan out, and it's not necessarily because they aren't good. It might be because of injuries. It might be because their development is mismanaged. It might just be because the team is not run well with strong leadership, like the Cleveland Browns. And so things can happen so quickly in professional sports. Life comes at you fast when you are a pro athlete. And yeah, it's a lot about situation and what situation athletes land in, who the coaches are, who are those who are making the decisions, and who are the people around them. Very often high draft picks get put into situations where teams are rebuilding or struggling, which means that their process to development can often take longer. It doesn't have to. I mean, with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, they had some really strong pieces around him. Still, though, they're trying to find the right formula on the offensive line. It definitely isn't perfect in his third year.
And I was going to say, when a new president of operations comes in, I'm just wondering if the Tigers are going to get rid of AJ Hinch or keep him. So that's going to be interesting in the next month to see what Scott Harris does with AJ as manager.
Yeah, definitely. There's some really important decisions around the league. We saw teams make managerial changes midstream this year, the Phillies being one of them. They felt like the voice that Joe Girardi took into the clubhouse wasn't resonating. And so for them to make a change to a manager who kind of took the pressure off that team and allowed those athletes to be themselves, sometimes it's about fit as well. And a lot of times, as you point out, a new general manager, a new boss wants to have their own guy running the team.
Absolutely. And this leads to my next question. What were your overall thoughts on the 2022 World Series with Houston winning in 6 games over the Phillies? And what impressed you most about the 2022 Phillies playoff run under manager Rob Thompson, who is from Sarnia, Ontario, and a Canadian Baseball Hall of Famer here as well?
Well, what I just mentioned specifically about Rob is that the entire tone and tenor of that clubhouse changed when he took over. It was the same guys for the most part, but the fact that they felt much more comfortable and that they were allowed to be themselves and that he treated them like men. I understand why Joe Girardi ran the team the way that he did. He came out of the Yankee system. It worked for him when he was in pinstripes. It worked for his colleagues and his teammates when he was with the Yankees. But that system and that managerial style doesn't work as well in today's professional sports with today's pro athlete. And so Rob Thompson made it easier for these guys to enjoy themselves, and they put them in positions to succeed simply because there wasn't the same tension going to work. I love their story. I think it's so much fun. Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, obviously the pitching staff, the Aaron Nola component. And man, did I love seeing Aaron and his brother go up against one another in the NLCS. That was really neat. So yes, their story is one of rags to riches, and we get those out of the NL East, do we not? The Washington Nationals were the same thing. They were dead last in their division before they rallied and won the World Series in 2019. So we're getting Cinderellas out of the NL East. And the fact that they defeated their nemesis, the Braves, I also think is a really cool arc to their story. As for Houston, Dusty Baker, his leadership, his professionalism, his reputation, his credibility, his equity, everything that he brought to the table, the fact that he was even willing to take over that Houston job going back several years ago, that was a total shift for the organization, and he brought respectability. I know that there are still 5 players left from that 2017 team, and because of that, there's still symbols of the cheating scandal and the tainted World Series. but Dusty Baker changed the tone of that organization. And obviously it's primarily new players. Jeremy Pena is a brand new superstar and the world knows his name now. But you also have the Justin Verlander piece of this. First ever World Series win as a pitcher. And then the resurgent year for him, coming back in his late 30s after Tommy John surgery. Wow, what a testament to not only the medical care, but also to his work ethic and his dominance as a future Hall of Fame pitcher. Yordan Alvarez with 3 gigantic game-winning home runs. He starts the playoffs with a walk-off. He finishes the playoffs with a come-from-behind blast in what was it, the 8th inning for the Astros against the Phillies in Game 6. So there's so many things to like about this team. They're fun. I think their fans in Minute Maid Park create an atmosphere of utter pandemonium, and that's fantastic as well. And like I said, to start, the fact that they are the villain in Major League Baseball and that there are people who will never forgive them. I do not believe they're cheating, but it's a storyline that draws people in, if for no other reason than people want to see the Astros lose.
I was reading on the news today, I guess Dusty Baker and their GM were extended for 1 year. And what I wanted to ask you, Amy, what's your gut feeling on Justin Verlander? Do you think he'll come back another year, or do you think might be it for him to leave
No,
on
it's
a high
definitely
note?
not it. No, he's not leaving. He's having
Okay.
too much fun. He is a free agent, and I wouldn't be surprised if he signed for a multi-year deal, actually. I mean, he's about to win the Cy Young. So I don't know. I hope that he stays in Houston. He clearly loves it there, but there will be offers for him because of the year he just had and the fact that he does take such good care of himself and that his arm had a year off in the late stages of his career. That's also critical.
I would love to see him back in Detroit, and I know he loves the Detroit area and the fans, but I don't think the Tigers are ready to compete next year. So I definitely don't think he'll end up in Detroit. So I fully expect him, if he comes back, like you say, Amy, it would be back in Houston. I could see him finishing his career with the Astros.
Yeah, he's definitely not going anywhere that isn't contending for a World Series, though he does make a team so much better when he's pitching the way that he is. But there's no reason for Justin to go anywhere. As much as he may love Detroit, there's no reason for him to go anywhere that isn't World Series ready or playoff ready.
Absolutely. Now, when he goes into the Hall of Fame, I want him as a Detroit Tiger. Do you think he'll go in as an Astro or a Tiger? And who has the final say on that?
Oh my gosh. Well, his career isn't over yet. So I don't think that we can close the book. He's not done. And if he continues to pitch for the Astros, well, then you're looking at the 2 World Series titles, potentially multiple Cy Youngs. I don't think that you can determine that yet. But there has to be a place for both, because if he continues to pitch for the Astros, he will have logged not quite as many years, but his career will almost be split in half. And if I'm not mistaken, the Hall determines that. I don't think the player determines that. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I think I remember reading at some point that that's actually a Hall of Fame decision.
And there's one gentleman on the Tigers, legend, and I'm still disappointed he's not in the Hall of Fame. Lou Whitaker, 5-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glover, batted .276, 244 home runs, almost 1,100 RBIs, considered one of the best second basemen of the 80s. And I just don't understand why they won't put him in the Hall of Fame. I'm really disappointed about that, because Lou Whitaker, when you think of Detroit Tigers, you think of Trammell and Whitaker for almost 20 years, 19 years together.
Well, I'm not familiar with him specifically. I don't remember him playing, though I was on the planet. But I do know that the Hall of Fame process is very selective and tough. And there are a lot of people that have those disappointments.
I think out of all the Hall of Fames in pro sports, I think Major League Baseball one in Cooperstown, I think, is the most difficult to get into, in my opinion.
Yeah, the process is pretty challenging. And they've obviously tweaked it more recently with trying to create diversity among the voters.
Definitely. And before I get to a couple NFL questions, Amy, Aaron Judge and Trey Turner, do you see them staying put with their respective clubs, or do you think that there's a possibility they both could move on?
Oh, I think there's a definite possibility they both could move on. I think it's going to come down to years for Aaron Judge. If the Giants, for instance, are willing to offer him 10 years, which I don't know why they would, but if they are, then why wouldn't you take that? I've heard numbers upward of 320, 330. 8 years, I think, is what the Yankees are prepared to offer him. But if he wants to go back to the Bay Area and they offer him significantly more money or a couple more years, maybe he does that instead. I don't know how the Yankees replace an athlete like him, not just his stats on the field, but his megawatt personality and the draw when it comes to ticket sales. I've been to so many Yankees games where he's been a part of them, and there's nothing like Aaron Judge fever. As for Trey Turner, he's going to have his pick. But the other thing about the shortstop market is there are other incredible shortstops available too. He's not the only one. And so there's the competition there too. Guys like Carlos Correa, for instance. And so it's a very healthy shortstop market. So we'll see. It could be a game of musical chairs. Who takes the offer first and where?
And as for the Yankees, I haven't heard anything about Cashman and Boone being let go. It's just this Yankees team, the New York Yankees, the expectations are so high there, but they did have a good year, but they just ran into a buzzsaw in the Houston Astros.
They did. It happened during the regular season as well when they lost 5 of the 7 games and only won the 2 that they did in walk-off fashion. Got no hit by the Astros during the year, which maybe was foreshadowing of a no-hitter in the World Series. So yes, they definitely have run into that team over and over that's better than them. And obviously they had a lot of injuries at the end of the year. They weren't the same team that they were when they built that ginormous lead in the AL East, though they did hang on.
Absolutely. I think that personally, the biggest disappointment in the postseason for me was the Toronto Blue Jays. Not just because I live by Toronto, it's just the expectations in Toronto were so great, and then they had that meltdown against the Seattle Mariners. But the management obviously felt that their interim manager, John Schneider, deserved a chance to manage a team for the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, there's disappointments all around, right? I expected more from the St. Louis Cardinals, to be sure. And I know they were very disappointed. They were home, obviously, and had a 7-run lead in the first game, and the Phillies rallied to come all the way back, and they never recovered.
And one thing I've learned about sports lately, in all of them, no lead is ever safe.
Well, except if you're the Cincinnati Bengals and you have Joe Mixon score 5 touchdowns against the Carolina Panthers. I think that one was safe.
Do you think the Bengals have turned a corner? So we're going to get to the NFL now anyways, Amy. Do you think the Bengals now are 5-4 with that win against Carolina? They're not a very good team. Do you think that's a turning point in their season?
I think it can be. It
Okay.
can be, but we don't know that yet. I was blown away by how bad they were against the Cleveland Browns the previous Monday night. I still say the offensive line is a major question mark. And without Jamar Chase, they're going to have to spread the ball around still, but they look stymied. They look stunted against Cleveland. So I'm not sure. They've been very inconsistent to this point.
And thoughts on the 2022 NFL season so far? I'm an Eagles fan. I'm happy we're 8-0, but there's still some things.
I like the use of the word "we" there, Chris.
I shouldn't say we.
No,
I shouldn't say we are. The Eagles are 8-0, and it's a nice start, but I'm not getting too carried away because, as you know, Amy, things can change week to week in the National Football League.
Oh, they do. They do change week to week. We're exactly at the midway point, 9 weeks behind us, 9 weeks to go. So it's kind of fun to stop and take stock. I think some of the great surprises are the AFC East and the NFC East. So every team in the AFC East is above 500. And that includes 3 teams with 6 wins and then the Patriots with 5 wins. I don't think anybody expected that, nor did people expect the NFC East, which people joke is the NFC least, has turned into the NFC beast to be as top heavy as it is. And the Commanders, until they lost this past weekend to the Vikings, had also logged 3 straight wins. The Vikings are a phenomenal story under Kevin O'Connell, first-year head coach, and I'm really surprised that he's not getting as much attention or as much credit as Brian Daboll is for turning the Giants around. The way that Kirk Cousins is playing has been fantastic, and his teammates draw out such a fun personality with him. I mean, not only was he all over in viral videos dancing without a shirt and a bunch of bling over the weekend on the team plane after they won at his former team, the Commanders, but he also was on with Peyton and Eli on the Monday Night Meetings. I mean, he was on with Pat McAfee on their show as well. So all of a sudden now Kirk Cousins is the rage. So the fact that they're 7-1 is unbelievable. I love it. Also love what the Seahawks are doing. Pete Carroll can coach a pair of socks and a water bottle. Coaching is not his issue, but boy, is he rejuvenated. And the faith that he put in Geno Smith and the faith that he's put in that rebuilt defense, and the fact that they've had to recycle through running backs and still they have a ball control game is also really impressive. And then on the flip side, what the heck is going on with the Green Bay Packers? It's awful. They're trying everything they can. It's not like Matt LaFleur is just sitting around picking his nose, but they cannot come up with any tried and true formula, anything that's working. Nothing's working. Their defense is bad. Their offense is bad. Their special teams are bad. And they do have a bunch of players who are injured, but that's also life in the NFL. I think this win for the Buccaneers over the weekend with 9 seconds to go, the Tom Brady touchdown pass, and the unbelievable final minute game-winning drive could be a spark for them. It makes me laugh, Chris, that people say Tom Brady is over the hill. He's done. He's old. He should retire. Brady is not the problem. Tom Brady is playing just fine. He's still a top 10 quarterback. That offensive line is a disaster. And Brady's having to get rid of the ball more quickly than he ever has before. And that's always been a staple of his career. But in addition to that, they're unable to run the ball, which means there's not nearly as much balance as they need it to be. So the Buccaneers are, I think they're in a really good spot still. Their division is obviously way down. So that means that they have every opportunity to win the NFC South. But it's not Brady. I mean, it's the offensive line. So there's some storylines that kind of blow me away. The Super Bowl champions being as bad as they are. The Super Bowl hangover thing, I don't believe is legit. We're halfway through the season. They're not still suffering from a hangover over winning the Super Bowl in February, for heaven's sakes. Their defense is still real good, but their offense is taking some hits. Obviously, they're missing pieces. They don't have Von Miller anymore. He was a great piece of what they did last year. So, there's some surprises on the high end, but there's also some surprises that we didn't see in terms of teams that are really scuffling.
My biggest three surprise teams this year are the Giants, Jets, and the Seahawks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great storylines. And this is the best thing about the NFL, that every year, roughly half the playoff field turns over. And that because of the salary cap and because of the structure, it's so competitive that we see this happen every single year. It's one of the reasons why the NFL is far and away the most popular sport in North America.
Absolutely. Speaking of that, the Buffalo Bills are facing a little bit of adversity as well with Josh Allen. I don't even know if he's going to be playing against the Vikings Sunday afternoon in Orchard Park.
It doesn't sound like anybody knows except for the team. So that's my fear, Chris, is that the team actually does know that he's not going to be out there. Similar to the Patriots with Mac Jones. They knew he had a high ankle sprain and he wasn't going to be able to play for weeks, but they kept that knowledge to themselves because Bill Belichick is notorious about protecting and hoarding information about players. And I can understand why. I'm worried about Josh Allen. I'm worried because a UCL injury can be serious. It's his throwing arm. The only other time he's missed games, his rookie year when he had a UCL injury. And so I'm nervous because the comments from Sean McDermott are very ominous. Right now, they are taking a wait and see approach publicly, but I fear that they may know more than they're letting on, and they just don't want their next opponent, who, forgive me, Vikings, right? Actually, it's the Vikings. They don't want the Vikings to know, and so they're not making it public. At this point, Sean McDermott won't even indicate if he's throwing, and so I'm nervous about that situation because the NFL is better with Josh Allen on the field, and obviously the Bills can't win without him gone for an extended period of time.
I find he's struggled the last 2 games, and I just think there's so much pressure on him to do everything for that team, and maybe some adversity and maybe having Case Keenum possibly come in might end up saying, "Hey guys, we're going to have to pull our weight offensively and the running game," because I find Allen obviously is one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the league, but Singletary and Cook and then Hines they got from the Colts, I think they need to start getting a running game going to take a little pressure off Allen when he is healthy and back in the lineup.
Well, that's been a consistent challenge for them, is to make sure
Yes.
they have the balance. And it's not just scrambling by Josh Allen. They also set up designed runs for him too. So yeah, they definitely need to have the balance. They need to have Naeem Hines and the others carry their weight. They need to make sure that they protect their QB, but ultimately he is the best athlete on that offense. He's got some incredible connections with his receivers like Stephon Diggs and others. So I think they're in a good spot. I think they faced plenty of adversity over the past few years. The playoff losses to the Chiefs, coming up short. I mean, that's been painful for them. I don't think this team needs any more growing experiences. They're good to go. They just have to stay healthy.
And before I get to my last question, Amy, quickly.
Yeah, you have to, because Penny is
Yeah.
now standing here
Yeah.
next to me, staring
Okay.
like, Mama, I need to go outside and go for my walk. She can't
Okay.
figure out why I'm talking and not talking to her.
No worries. You know what? I'll save the one question for the next time I have you on. But this last question: can the Denver Broncos contend for a playoff spot? And thoughts on Russell Wilson and head coach Nathaniel Hackett, and is he under the hot seat in Denver?
Oh, he's definitely on the hot seat, especially with new owners now coming in, this being their first year. I don't know how quickly they make a change, but we've seen 2 other teams make changes already. And so I don't know if they would, because I'm not familiar with these owners, but the fact that this situation with Russell Wilson has started out so badly and they gave him a contract and they're tied to him long term, like it or not. They do have weapons around him. Obviously, they also need to continue to run the ball too, to take pressure off him. It's a disaster. It couldn't have gone worse, because it's the AFC West and because it's the AFC in general. Not only are they way behind in their own division, but there's so many teams that will compete for wild card spots. I would say right now they're a long shot, but it's still only mid-season. Let's say they go on a run and win 6 in a row, which is tough to do in the AFC, but also tough to do in that division. Well, then you're right there in the thick of it, because the best teams in the AFC only have 6 wins, right? You've got 4 of them, 5 of them who have 6 wins, if I remember correctly. And so it's not as though they're out of it, but they need a great sense of urgency. And that offense I don't know if Nathaniel Hackett's the one to figure it out, but we'll see moving forward. Everything's still on the table for every team in the NFL, save maybe the Colts. That they obviously have made some drastic changes. The Texans are not in a position where they can compete on both sides of the ball. We'll see what happens with the Browns when Deshaun Watson returns. But for the most part, it's only the midway point, and there's a lot of real estate left, Chris.
Absolutely. And I was going to say they take on a very difficult opponent this Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. And to me, I think it's going to be critical for them to get a win there, because 3-6 is pretty difficult to overcome. But we'll see what happens against the Tennessee Titans. But Denver does have a solid defense. So
they do, although they traded away Bradley Chubb. And a lot of people thinks that was a great move for them. I don't think the team is better by trading away Bradley Chubb. So it's tough.
anyways, Amy, I'm going to let you go so you can take Penny for her walk and spoil her. And I did to keep my promise to keep you to a half an hour. So I'm getting better.
Well, that is certainly a quality that you need to have as a talk show host, is that you know how to manage time. And I appreciate that you had me on again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy, and we'll definitely keep in touch with you on Twitter and social media. And enjoy your walk with Penny, and enjoy the sporting events, NFL games, and college football this weekend as well.
All right, Chris, you do the same. I'm glad you're enjoying this time of the year, and congratulations on your show that continues to grow.
Thank you. Episode 214 today, by the way.
Awesome.
Okay, Amy, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed my podcast with Amy Lawrence. She's the host of After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio every Monday to Friday from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Eastern as well. And she gets a lot of great guests. And you can also follow Amy on Twitter at A Law Radio. That's at A Law Radio on Twitter. And Amy's quite active on Twitter as well. And you can also check out her website too, Amy Lawrence pxp.com. That's her website as well. And also, After Hours with Amy Lawrence is on Apple Podcasts. So check out After Hours with Amy Lawrence on Apple Podcasts as well. And Amy's a huge Denver Broncos fan as well. And also, guys, you can check out odyssey.com/CBS Sports Radio for their schedule of when Amy and those guys are on as well. But Amy's on every night, Monday to Friday from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. She gets a lot of great guests, and she's been with CBS Sports Radio now for 13 years, coming from originally from ESPN Radio. And I want to say thank you again to Amy Lawrence for coming on season 4, episode 49 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, which is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210. Tell them Chris Pame, aka CDP, sent you down there as well. And also, guys, now available for pre-orders is the all-electric Cadillac Lyric and also the all-electric Silverado as well. And one of the sales guys down there, Nathan Laud, does a really good job. And go check when you go down to Barry Cullen, go check out and see Nathan does a really good job there as well. And I bought my latest vehicle, a 2023 Chevy Trailblazer from Barry Cullen as well. So I want to say thank you to Mark Cullen for sponsoring Live with CDP Sports Talk as well. And as I'm going to wrap this show up as well, guys, just wanted to let you know the Argo Bounce live audio show on Twitter Spaces tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern with my guest with my guest co-host Nick Small, as we break down the Toronto Argonauts previous and preview their upcoming opponents. Check me out on Twitter at Chris D. Pame, on Twitter. And myself and Nick Small's special guest tonight is Rick Zamperin from CHML 900 in Hamilton to preview the East and West final. Rick was the Tiger Cats play-by-play announcer for 7 seasons, and now he's the host of the 5th quarter post-game show for the Hamilton Tiger Cats on CHML. So Rick's going to come on and talk a little bit about the 2022 Hamilton Tiger Cats season, the East final loss to the Montreal Alouettes, and then Rick's going to just preview the Toronto-Montreal game Sunday at 1 o'clock at BMO Field, and also the BC Winnipeg game at 4:30 Sunday as well. So please check me out on Twitter tonight, Twitter Spaces on Twitter, for the Argo Bounce live audio show. And we're going to talk some Toronto Argonaut football, some CFL, and a little bit about the Tiger Cats season from Rick Zamperin from CHML 900 in Hamilton. And Rick's a really good guy, and he's also a Maple Leaf fan too, if you like the Leafs as well. And also, guys, I'll get another show next live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Tomorrow, Thursday, November 10th at 2 p.m. My guest is going to be Daniela Panicelli. She's the pre- and post-game host and sideline reporter for the CFL Saskatchewan Roughriders on 620 CKRM in Regina, Saskatchewan. And Daniela is going to come on for about a half an hour and talk about the 2022 Saskatchewan Roughriders season, which they unfortunately didn't make the playoffs. And she's also going to talk about the Grey Cup, which is being held at Mosaic Stadium in Saskatchewan, in Regina, Saskatchewan this year. So we're going to talk a little Riders football and a little bit about the Grey Cup coming up in Saskatchewan, and also who she thinks will be in the Grey Cup as well. I'm personally predicting it'll be Toronto and BC in the Grey Cup final for the first time since 1983. But the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they are the back-to-back Grey Cup champs, and they're playing at home on Sunday against BC. But I really think Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions could shock them. But Winnipeg is trying to be the first CFL team since the 78-82 Edmonton Eskimos, who won 5 consecutive Grey Cups under Warren Moon. So It should be great. Both games are on TSN. 1 o'clock Toronto, Montreal, TSN. 4:30 BC at Winnipeg at TSN. The Argos game is also on TSN 1050 with Mike Hogan with the play-by-play on the radio call as well. So again, I hope you can check out my podcast show tomorrow, 2 o'clock Eastern with Daniela Ponticelli, the pre and post game host and the sideline reporter for the CFL Saskatchewan Roughriders. She knows her football. Great guest to have on, and I'm looking forward to it as well. And before we wrap this up, guys, I've got a little clip video for you guys too as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is also available on audio platforms. Just one sec. Live with CDP podcast, the audio version is now on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Stitcher, and Tuned In as well. So I'm on 16 platforms, 13 audio, which I just mentioned, and I'm also on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. And I want to say thank you to everybody watching this live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as well. Before we call this a show, guys, I'm just going to show you a little clip I forgot to play last week of my guest, the star receiver from the Toronto Argonauts, Curly Gittens Jr. A little bit of a clip from him before he got drafted by the Argonauts.
University. My first memory would be scoring my first touchdown ever playing football, my first season ever playing football. My parents were running on the sideline as I was entering the end zone. They were just so excited for me that they're like, I guess, running with me. I came to Canada 10 years ago from the country, Guyana, and I knew nothing about football. So when I started playing it was just like, man, this game's fun. You know, I never thought about like reaching higher goals until one of my coaches were saying, hey, you're good at this. I feel like as a player, I'm very versatile. I can do a lot of things. Any way to get the ball in my hands, I can literally take it to the house. Wherever position they decide to put me in the CFL, being a receiver, being a returner, I'd be able to succeed at it. I never want to be content. I always want more. As a player, as a person, as a student, I always want more, you know? So like just knowing what my family's been through, just like having that drive. I know that that's not going to end. Having that drive just keeps me going, to be honest.
Anyways, guys, that clip's courtesy of the Canadian Football League, and I meant to show you that clip of Curly Gittens Jr. last week when I had him on my show. And Curly Gittens Jr. and the Toronto Argonauts are going to be trying to win the first East Final since 2017 against the Montreal Alouettes Sunday at 1 o'clock at BMO Field. And I really think the Argonauts are going to win this game, but it's going to be a very competitive and close game, and it could come down to the last play of the game as well. So if you guys can't go down to BMO Field Sunday at 1 o'clock, game is on TSN or TSN 1050 with Mike Hogan on the radio as well. So that's about it. Again, guys, I want to say thank you to Amy Lawrence from After Hours with Amy Lawrence from CBS Sports Radio for coming on my show for a third time and talking a little Major League Baseball and a little NFL with us as well. And if you guys give me about 10 minutes, I'll have this episode downloaded to all my audio platforms as well. And again, I hope you guys can tune in to the Argo Bounce live audio show tonight on Twitter Spaces at 7 o'clock Eastern with my co-host Nick Small and special guest Rick Zamperin from CHML 900 in Hamilton to talk a little bit about the Tiger Cats 2022 season and preview the East and West finals, which should be outstanding football here as well. So that's about it, guys. Again, I hope everybody has a great night. Have a great rest of the day, great evening, and we'll see you guys at 7 o'clock on Twitter Spaces for the Argo Bounce live audio show. And also, guys, again, my next podcast is tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern with my guest, Daniela Ponticelli, the pre- and post-game host, sideline reporter for the Saskatchewan Roughriders on 620 CKR in Regina, Saskatchewan. So tune in. All right, guys, have a great day, great evening, and we'll talk to you guys either tonight or tomorrow for season 4, episode 50 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership here in Guelph. Thank you again for watching and listening to Live with CDP.